Start the Gemara today on Daf Chavches Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Tana Rabbanan, Maise b'Rabbi Eliezer, Sheshavas b'Galil Elyon. There was a story with Rabbi Eliezer that was staying in the upper Galil. V'shalu shloishim halachas b'Hilchas Sukkah. And he was asked 30 questions regarding the halachas of Sukkah. Shtei Mesre, regarding 12 of those questions, Amalem Shemaiti, he told them, I heard from my Rebbe the answer to the halacha. Shmaina Asar, 18 of those questions, Amalahem, he said to them, Loi Shamaiti. I didn't hear from my Rebbe the answer, so he didn't give the answer. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Chiluf Advarim. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says that it was the reverse. Shmaina Asar, Amalahem Shamaiti. 18 of the questions he said he heard from his Rebbe. Shtei Mesra Amalahem Loi Shamaiti. 12 of the questions he said he did not hear the answer. Amru Loi, so the people that asked him these questions said to him, Kol dvarecha eina nela mipi shmua. Everything that you say is only from what you heard from your Rebbe. You don't say anything else. They saw that he didn't want to answer on many of the questions. Amalahem, so he says to them, His kaktuni loymar dava shaloi shamaytim yipira baisai. Are you going to bring me and force me to say something that I did not hear from my Rebbe? And here he told them what his custom is, that he doesn't say anything that he didn't hear from his Rebbe, and he told them b'chlal b'negei to different things that are his customs. Miyamai, my entire life, like Kidmani Adam bebeis hamedrash. There was no one ever before me in the morning of the beis medrash. V'lo yashanti bebeis hamedrash. I never slept in the shul. Lo yishinas kva, not a long sleep. V'lo yishinas aray, and not a short nap. V'lo yanachti Adam bebeis hamedrash v'yatzasi. I never had anyone left in the shul when I left at night from the shul. He was always the last that left. V'lo yisachti sichas chulin. I did not talk conversations of foolish subjects. So as Rashi says, divrei avoy yischoik. And I never said something, I never taught a halacha or something that I did not hear from my Rebbe. So this was his minig always that he had, that he never said anything that's not from his Rebbe. That's why he didn't answer them. According to one of the pshatim in the Marsha, when the Gemara before says, his kaktuni loyma davash loyma shemaitim mipira baisai, it was this list of things that he was telling them about his behavior. He's saying that because you're pressing me and asking me why I'm not answering you, so let me tell you about my minhagim, my behavior that I have, so you won't have a kpada that I'm not answering you. And he's saying all of these minhagim that he did, even though this itself is something that he didn't hear from his Rebbe. Although, as we'll see soon, it's a behavior that he learned from his Rebbe, but he didn't hear this mamish from his Rebbe, and yet he's repeating it to them. So Amru Allah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. They said regarding Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, his different minhagim, and Rabbi Eliezer learned it from him. Miyamav leisach sichas chulin. He never spoke any foolish conversations. V'lei holach dal amis b'lei teira, and he never went 4 amis without teira or b'lei tefillin, and without tefillin. V'lei kadmi adam beis hamedrash. There was no one ever before him in the shul. V'lo yashem beis hamedrash. He never slept in the beis medrash. Lo yishinas kva v'lo yishinas aray. Not permanently or not a nap. V'lo hirer b'muvois hametunofes. He never thought words of Torah in the filthy alleyways that you're not supposed to think divrei Torah there. V'lo yiniach adam beis hamedrash v'yatza. He never left anyone in the shul and left before them. V'lo matzai adam yoshev v'doimim. He was never found. No person ever found him sitting silently, not active, not learning Torah. He was always sitting and learning. No one else opened the door for his Talmidim, only he himself. And he never repeated something that he did not hear from his Rebbe. He never said, it's time came to leave the Beis Medrash. They always continued till the very end of the day. They never left the middle of the day. Chutz mi'arvei psachim, besides when it was Erev Pesach, when you have to go for the Korban Pesach, and also for the children, to put them to sleep, that they should be up at night. And the Arvei Yom HaKippurim, and Erev Yom Kippur, where there's a mitzvah to eat and drink during the day in order to fast for the next day. So Rabbi Eliezer, his student, also had the same customs as we saw before. He followed the ways of his Rebbe. Tana Rabbanam, we learned in Abraisa, Shmainim Talmidim, Hoyeleile Hillel Azaken. 80 Talmidim Hillel Azaken had. Shloishim Mehen, 30 of them, Re'uyim Shetishra Aleim Shechina K'Moshe Rabbeinu. They were deserving that the Shechina should dwell on them like Moshe Rabbeinu. Ushloishim Mehen, another 30 of them, Re'uyim Shetamid Lem Chayma, Chama, that is, Ki Yeshua Ben Nun. They were worthy that the sun should stop in its tracks in the sky like it happened to Yeshua ben Nun. And Esrim, another 20 of them, Beinanim. They were average. They were not on such a high level, but they were average. Also very great tzaddikim, of course. Godel Shebekulam, the greatest of all of them, or according to one shot, the greatest of the Beinanim, Yonasan ben Azil. Katan Shebekulam, the smallest from all of them, was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Amru Allah. So when it says that the smallest amongst them was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Mefarshim point out, it doesn't mean literally that he was the smallest from all the Talmidim. It can't be, because after Hillel HaZaken passed away, he took him over. Elamai means in certain areas he was considered to be the smallest. Amru Allah Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So it was said about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shalai Hiniach, he didn't leave. In other words, he did not learn Mikra, all the psukim of the Torah, Mishnah, and the Mishnayos, Gemara, all the Gemaras, Halachas, all the other Halachas that there are. As Rashi here says, it refers to the Halachas l'Moshe Misinai. We had a lot of them before, God, Lavud, Daif Nakuma, and everything else. Agadais, all of the drashas that there are in psukim, Diktuke Torah, to know exactly each letter in the Torah, every ribui, every miut, everything in the Torah, Diktuke Seifrim. Also, all the takanas of Chazal, which are called Diktuke Seifrim. Interestingly, Rashi here says, because when Chazal made their takanas, they were medaktik. They studied human behavior to know exactly which takanas have to be made as a siyag. Kalim v'chamurim, all the kal v'chaimis, Gzeres Shavis, all the drashas that are Gzeres Shavis, Tkufais, also the Tkufais, which is the cheshbon of the solar and the lunar system, to know the time of Kiddush HaChodesh and so on. Gematriyos, all the different gematriyos that there are, which is one of the ways of learning Torah. As Rashi here brings different examples. Sichas Malachei Asharis, the conversations of the Malachim. Sichas Shadim, the conversations of the Shadim. Sichas the Kolim, the conversations of palm trees. Regarding this, Rashi says that he doesn't know what this is. Mishalis Kaifsim, then the analogies or the parables of the washers. Mishalis Shualim, the analogies of foxes. As Rashi says, these are different kinds of Mishalim that in earlier generations they would explain Divrei Torah, or they would give Musar using these kinds of Mishalim. So he knew and studied all these Mishalim. Dava Gadol v'Dava Katan. Great matters and small, simple matters. And the Gemara explains what that is. Dava Gadol, Maisa Merkava. Dava Gadol refers to Maisa Merkava. And Dava Katan is Avayis Abaye v'Rava. And Dava Katan refers to all the questions and answers of Abaye v'Rava that we have throughout Shas. So although Abaye and Rava were much after the time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, but nevertheless, he already was the one that had all these questions and studied all these subjects, and then it was handed down, and Abaye and Rava asked all of these questions. L'kayim Hashenema, this fulfills what the pasuk says, Lahanchil Oyev Yesh, I give to the ones that love me, Yesh, which is through the 310 worlds that the Eibusha gives them in Olam Haba, V'yitzriseyem Amali, and their storehouses I fill up. So this was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that knew all of this. There's a maimer from the Rebbe Marash, there's also a maimer from the Rebbe, Ba'aleis Chatavshin Chavtes, where the Rebbe discusses Barichas, the concept of Dava Gadol being Maisim Merkava, and Dava Katan being Avayis Abaye v'Rava. And the point that Rebbe there says is that actually Dava Katan is even greater than Dava Gadol. Maisim Merkava refers to the Merkava L'mayla, which is completely bottled to Hashem, like a chariot that's bottled to the rider on it with no choice or opinion or feeling of his own. But Dava Katan, which refers to the words of Torah that are nislabish and gashmius and come down here in this world, there's even a greater bittul in that aspect of learning Torah that's here in the gashmius, even more than the Maisim Merkava L'mayla. Look in the Maimer there, Barichas. So the Gemara asks, if the smallest amongst Hillel HaZaken's Talmidim was so great and knew all of this, so Gadol Shebekulan, the greatest amongst them, Allah Chaskam v'Kam, most definitely knew all of this. Amru Olav, and it was said even more so, Yonasan ben Azil, regarding Yonasan ben Azil, that B'shah, Sheyeshev Isaac b'Teirah, any time when he was sitting and learning Teirah, Kol Oif, Sheparach Olav, any bird that flew above his head, Miyad Nisraf, was immediately burnt from the holiness of the Teirah that he learned. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Mi Shahaya Roishai V'Rubai B'Sukkah. If a person is sitting, his head and most of his body in the Sukkah. As Rashi explained in the beginning of the Masechta, they did not sit straight in chairs. They sat spread out on sort of a couch. So therefore, even if his head is in the Sukkah, not necessarily is most of his body in the Sukkah. So his head and most of his body is in the Sukkah. Ve'shulchanai b'toich habayis. However, his table is in the house. Beishamai Paislin, Beishamai says this is puzzle. Beis Hillel machshirin, and Beis Hillel says it's kosher. So as we learned in the beginning of the Masechta on Daf Gimel, the Gemara explained that there are actually two details in the machlokes here. They're discussing the minimum size of a sukkah to be kosher or apostle, and they're also discussing the mitzvah of sukkah. When you eat in the sukkah, do you have to also have the table in the sukkah or not? According to Beis Hillel, or according to Beis Shammai, there's a gzeira that you may be drawn after your table and end up eating out of the sukkah. Amrulam Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, so Beis Hillel say to Beis Shammai, Loi ka choya maisa. Isn't this the story that happened? Shaholchu zikne Beis Shammai, v'zikne Beis Hillel, levakes Rabbi Yochanan ben Acharonis. They went to visit Rabbi Yochanan ben Acharonis. He was sitting, his head and most of his body that was in the sukkah, but his table was in his house. And they didn't comment to him about what he was doing, and it was okay. So we see over here, Beis Hillel says that this is fine. So Beis Shammai responded and said, Misham Raya, from that incident you're bringing a proof. They did tell him in Canaan Yisa Noyig, if this is what your custom always was, you've never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah. So as most Rishonim say, it doesn't mean literally that he never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah, because the fact is his head and most of his body was inside the sukkah, and even if you have to have your table in the sukkah to be yetzer the mitzvah, that's just exedim d'Rabbanan, because you may be drawn after your table. But they were saying you never fulfilled the mitzvah of sukkah properly the way Chachamim required it to be fulfilled. It's interesting that you have here sort of a machlokes in a fact of a story. What happened? Did they comment or did they not comment? So some of Farshim say that the way Beis Hillel reported the story, they were there, and when they were present, no one commented. But then Beis Shammai answers them, but after you left, so then someone did comment, someone did say something about it. So it was different times of when this story occurred. So women, Eved Kanani, and a cotton is potter from sukkah. Cotton, a cotton that does not need his mother, chayiv b'sukkah, is obligated in sukkah, meaning his father should see to it that he should be in the sukkah because of the mitzvah of chinuch. Maise, there was an incident, v'yolda kalasei, shel Shammai Azakin. Shammai Azakin's daughter-in-law gave birth to a baby, upiches es amaziva, and he removed the plaster, v'sicher al gabi amita, and he placed schach above the bed of the baby, b'shvul cotton, for this baby. That's how far it goes according to Beis Shammai, to be machmet for this child to be doing the mitzvah of sukkah. From where do I know that women are not chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah? The Tana Rabbana we learned in the Braisa, Ezrach, when it says in the Torah, Kol Ezrach bi Yisrael yeshvu b'sukkah. So if we would just say Ezrach without the hey, so Zeh Ezrach, this refers to all people, to all Yidden, men and women. Then when it says Ha Ezrach, the Ezrach, so that's an exclusion. Lahaitzias anoshim, to exclude the women. But then it says Kol ha'ezrach, so Kol is coming to include. L'rabbis es aktanim. This comes to include that even ktanim are chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah. That's the brisa. Amamar, so the master in this brisa said ha'ezrach lahaitzias anoshim. That ha'ezrach, because it says a hey, it excludes women. Lememre, shall we say the ezrach, that the word ezrach without the hey is bein noshim bein gavri mashma. This refers to men and women, both included, and you have to have the hey to exclude the women. But Vatanya, we learned in another brayse, it says ha ezrach. This is by Yom Kippur, when it says in the pasuk that v'chol melacha leisasu ha ezrach v'ager, that you shouldn't do any melacha in Yom Kippur. So it says ha ezrach l'rabbis es anoshim ha ezrachiyos shechayav is b'inui. When it says ha ezrach, so this comes to include the women, that they are also obligated in fasting on Yom Kippur. So Alma, what do I see from this? Ezrach gavri mashma. That when it says Ezrach, so Ezrach means men. And only because it says ha-Ezrach, in this case we're actually using the hey to include. That because it says ha-Ezrach, it includes the women as well, but Ezrach alone means only men. So the Gemara is not focusing on the difference regarding the drasha of the hey. That before we said hey is an exclusion, and here we're saying that hey is to include even more. The Gemara is focusing on the taich of the word Ezrach. Ezrach, what is Ezrach? Ezrach includes men or women, or is Ezrach only men? As far as the hay is concerned, we find many times that a hay could be either a ribuy or a miyah. It depends on the context. But what's the story with Ezrach? So the Gemara says, Omar Rabbe, so Rabbe explains, Hilchase ninu. One of these drashas here regarding the women, that they're included as well, or they're excluded, is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Vasmechinu Rabbanon akroi. And the Rabbanan in the Braise are just bringing a pasuk to lean it on a pasuk, but the source is not really a pasuk. So you can't have both of these drashas. One of them is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Fragt the Gemara, so haikra v'hayilchasa. Which one of them is actually learned from the pasuk, and which one of them is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai? So we have to clarify that. Then there's a more basic question here. Kra lamali. Why do we b'chlal need a pasuk to teach me that women are pater from the mitzvah of sukkah? Hilchasa lamali. And why do I need also a halacha l'Moshe Misinai to teach this to me? And the question is actually regarding both, regarding sukkah and also regarding the mitzvah of Inui, of fasting and Yom Kippur, as the Gemara will explain. Sukkah mitzvah say shazman grame. Sukkah is a mitzvah say that's only one at a certain time. V'chol mitzvah say shazman grame. Noshim petureis. Women are potter from such a mitzvah. So why do we need any pasuk? Yom Kippurim, and on the other hand, when it comes to Yom Kippur, with Rav Yudah Marav Nafke, we learn this from what Rav Yudah Marav said. Rav Yudah Marav Chein Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel O Makro, and the Torah says Ish or Isha. And at the continuation of the pasuk, it speaks about ki yasam kol chatas ha'adam limoma b'Hashem v'shma nefesh shehi. So it's speaking about a case where there's a einish for being over a iser. So from that pasuk, since it says ish oy isha, we learn out that hishva akosov isha leish l'chalein shebetayra. That the Torah says that men and women are always obligated equally when it comes to all these isurim, a lav, that there's an einish for. So there, men and women are equal. So therefore, when it comes to the Isser of eating, you have to fast on Yom Kippur, there's an Einish Kaddis if you don't. Over there, men and women are equal. You don't need a special drasha for that. Omar Abaye. So Abaye explains and answers all these questions. La'aylam, the truth is as follows. Sukkah hilchasa. The Sukkah, when we're saying that Sukkah, women are potter, it's for Sukkah that we're bringing a halacha l'Moshe Misinai to say that they're potter. In other words, when it says the pasuk Ezrach, Ezrach means only men. It doesn't mean women as well. And therefore, when it says the Ha-Ezrach by Yom Kippur, there we're adding women as well. But by Sukkah, when it says Ha-Ezrach, the Pshat in the Braise, when it says that from Ha-Ezrach we see to exclude women, that's just an asmachta. That's not really the source. The source is a halacha l'Moshe Misinai that women are excluded. So there's no stir in the drasha. So we know which one is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Sukkah. Now the Gemara explains. So now you'll ask, why do you need the halacha l'Moshe Misinai? It says it's a mitzvah seisha azman grame and women are potter. V'etzrich, I need this halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And the Gemara here brings two pshatim. Sol kedaita chamine, I would think to say teishvu ke'en tadur. The Torah requires to sit and be in the sukkah the same way you live in the house. Ma dira ish v'ishtay. Just like in the house you live husband and wife together. Av sukkah ish v'ishtay. So too in the sukkah it should be husband and wife, and therefore I would think that the wife is obligated for the mitzvah in order for it to be fulfilled properly by her husband, like teishvu ke'en tadur. So that's the chiddush of this halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that women are still potter. That's one shot. Rava says, it's derech, I need halacha l'Moshe Misinai for the following reason. Sol kedai t'chamin, I would think to say, Yalef chamishasa mechag hamatzis. I learn out a gzeir shaveh from matzah, just like we had the gzeir shaveh before regarding the obligation of eating the first night of Sukkot in the Sukkah. So I would think that maybe you should learn out this gzeir shaveh for this as well. That mala alon noshim chayavis, just like by matzah, women are obligated to eat matzah. Afkan noshim chayavis. Here as well, I would say that women are chayiv to eat in the Sukkah. Kamash Malan, that's why I need a special halacha l'Moshe Misinai to say that women are potter from the mitzvah of Sukkah. So now that you're saying that the Sukkah, the fact that women are potter, is a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. So kra lamali, so the pasuk of Ha-Ezrach, it's an extra pasuk. So we're not using it for this. So what do we learn out from Ha-Ezrach? Rabbi is a sagerim. Ha-Ezrach is a riboy. Just like it is regarding Yom Kippur, Ha-Ezrach is coming to be marba the women. So over here as well, it's a riboy. What is it adding? That Geirim are chayiv as well. Sol kedaita chamina, I would think to say, Ha-Ezrach b'Yisrael amarach moneh v'loyes ha-Geirim, that when it says Ezrach, it means only a citizen. In other words, a Yid, and not a born a Yid, and not Geirim. Kamash Malan, therefore it says Ha-Ezrach to come and add Geirim as well. Yom Kippurim. So the Gemara now says, Yom Kippur, mit Rav Yudah Marav Nafke. So as we asked before regarding Yom Kippur, why do we need a special drasha to add and include women in the mitzvah to fast in Yom Kippur? But we learned it out from Rav Yudah Marav that if there's an einish kaddis for this, so women are included as well. So the Gemara answers, Lo nitzracha ela l'tois v'sinai. We only need the pasuk to include women, even in the mitzvah of Tosfos Yom Kippurim, which the Gemara learns out in Masechta Yuma towards the end, that you're supposed to add from the daytime a little bit to begin fasting even while it's day. Why do I need a special pasuk for that? So because I would think to say, since when it comes to that added time when you fast, when it's still day. So there is a mitzvah to add a time, but there is no azhara, there's no warning for this, and there's no kaddish either. It's just a mitzvah. So I would think that women are not included in this mitzvah. So therefore, so women are not obligated in this. Kamash Malan, that's the chiddush of ha'ezrach, that not only the women have to fast on Yom Kippur, but they also have to begin the fast from Tosfos Yom Kippurim, which is only a mitzvah. Omamar, the master said before in the Braisa, that kol, when it says kol ha'ezrach, le'rabbis ha'saktanim, this comes to include the children as well. Fragt the Gemara, but what nan? In the Mishnah we learned, Noshim v'avodim u'ketanim p'turim min ha-sukkah, that the ketanim are potter from sukkah. So the answer is, lo kasha, there's no question. Kam bekotn she'egiya lechinuch. There's a child that came to the age of chinuch, so he's obligated. And kam bekotn she'lo yegiya lechinuch. Then there's a child that did not come to the age of chinuch, which is really in the Mishnah itself. As Taisus points out, the Mishnah itself says that there's a difference between a child which is tzarech li'imay or not. Kotn she'egiya lechinuch. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, that's your answer? We're talking about a cotton that's chayiv because of chinuch, but that's only an obligation midrabanan. But we're learning it out from a pasuk, kol. So the Gemara answers, midrabanan, it's taka only midrabanan. Ukra asmachta balmo. The pasuk brought in the Braisa is just an asmachta, it's not the real source. So what's the age of this? When it says the katan shegiel chinuch, what's the actual age? So from the Gemara you understand that it varies. It depends on each child. At what point he doesn't need his mother anymore. The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch though says sheish shanim shleimos. When the child is 7 years old, so then that's the time when every child is going to be obligated in the mitzvah of sukkah. But there could be a case where a child, even from a younger age, doesn't need his mother anymore and is the age of chinuch to be in the mitzvah of sukkah. Sagt the Gemara, so the shiur that it said in the Mishnah was a child that does not need his mother. Who's a child? How do we know? What does this mean? He doesn't need his mother. A child that uses the bathroom and his mother doesn't have to come to wipe him. It's one pshat. Another pshat is Rab Shimon, or the Gerser is Rab Shimon ben Lakish Aimer, Kol Shnei Mishnasa, he wakes up from his sleep, and he doesn't call his mother. Fragt the Gemara, according to the Gersa we have here, it says twice in the Gemara, Ima, Gedailim Nami Karu. To call your mother, even a child that's much older, even a Meah after Bar Mitzvah calls the mother. So that's not an indication that the child is mature already, or is not mature if he calls the mother. Elo, so rather the pshat over here is Eime, or some take it out, Kol Sheneyer, someone that wakes up, Ve'ena Kaira Ima. He doesn't call his mother again and again until his mother comes. He's persistent until his mother actually comes. That shows on a child that's not mature enough to be chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah. Maise, there was an incident, V'yolda Kalasichol. The story with Beishamai's daughter-in-law that had birth, a baby, and Beishamai opened up, the Shamai Azaken opened up the roof for a sukkah there. Fragt the Gemara, Maise, Lister, it's bringing a story to contradict the point we just made, that it has to be a child that doesn't rely on his mother. And says the Gemara, it's missing in the Mishnah, and it should say as follows. V'shamai machmer, and Shammai was stringent about this. Maise nami, v'yolda kalosai, shel Ashamai azaken, and the story also was that his daughter-in-law gave birth, and he removed the plaster, and he put up the schach for the child in order to sit in the sukkah. So this was the chumrah of Beishamai. Right, so some say that according to Beishamai, this actually means Shammai held that the father's chayav to do this minat Torah because of Teshuvah Kain Taduru, to sit in the sukkah together with your entire family, even mamish with the youngest, even with the babies mamish, like it is in your house. Your babies are living with you in the house. This is the pshat of the Ra'ah in the Gemara. Okay. Others say no, this is midrabanan because of the mitzvah of chinuch, and the mitzvah of chinuch in this case begins by the youngest age when the baby is able to be in the bed but inside the sukkah. He didn't hold of this shiur of tzarech li'imay. Zok Heilige Mishneh, kol shivas hayomim. All 7 days of sukkahs, adam oiseh sukkah sekva ubeiseh are. The sukkah has to be a permanent dwelling and your house is temporary. Yardu kishamim. If it rains in the sukkah, when is one allowed to go out of the sukkah? If If you have a dish of this congealed food, which is something that gets spoiled quickly from rain, and it's getting spoiled from the rain, you can leave the sukkah. Mashlu, mashal, the following mashal was given, lama david daime. What is it compared to when it rains in sukkahs? Le'eved, shabal limze kais le'rabbi. A servant that comes to prepare a cup of wine for his master, v'shavach le'kitin al panav, and he pours it in his face. Now the Gemara will say exactly who pours it into whose face, but the point is, as Rashi over here says, that it's a siman klala that the mitzvah is not being accepted. We'll see it more in the Gemara. But we see here that there's an Indian of a siman klala. It's actually one year, Tafshil Lamed Vav, I believe it was, when in New York it rained the entire sukkah non-stop, and heavy rain. And it was very difficult to be in the sukkah. So someone asked the Rebbe about this, and the Rebbe answered as follows, that today you ate in the sukkah, you made the bracha in the sukkah, as the minig Chabad is, the minig of many chassidim is, that even when it rains, you still sit in the sukkah, and you make a bracha of leishiv basukah even when it rains. And then the rest of the day, you couldn't be in the sukkah, especially sukkahs, the fabrengens by chassidim, it couldn't be in the sukkah, it was indoors. So the Rebbe said, the Eibishter wants you to sit comfortably in your house and to fabreng without the wind and the cold of the sukkah, so you're able to do the mitzvah of sukkah, and you also able to fabreng comfortably in your house. So the Rebbe turned it around in the positive and said that it was something good. Sagt the Gemara, Tana Rabbanon, we learned in the Braisa, Kol Shivas Hayamim, the 7 days of Sukkah, so the Moises Sukkah, your house has to be, that your Sukkah that is, should be permanent, or Beis Hayare, and your house is temporary. Ketzad, what does this mean? Oh, you like Kalim Nom, you had beautiful vessels, Mailon the Sukkah, bring it up into the Sukkah. Matzois noise, beautiful bedding, Mailon the Sukkah, bring it into the Sukkah. Oichel, V'shaise, or Metayel B'Sukkah, you eat and you drink and you walk around, in other words, you spend your time in the Sukkah. From where do I know this? The Tana Rabbanan, because we learned in another Braisa that explains the source. It says in the pasuk, Teishvu ke'en taduru. You live in the sukkah the way you live in your house. Mikan omru. From this pasuk we learn, Kol Shivas Hayamim, all 7 days of sukkah. So I saw them sukkah sekva. Your sukkah has to be your permanent place. So Beis Hayara, and your house is temporary. Ketzad, hoyakalim noim, mailam l'sukkah, your beautiful dishes you bring to the sukkah, matzois nois, mailam l'sukkah, your nice bedding you bring into the sukkah, oichel v'shaisu metayel b'sukkah, and you eat and drink and spend your time at the sukkah. And the Braisa here also has another thing, umishanin b'sukkah, and he also learns in the sukkah. But the translation of the word mishanin actually specifically refers to learning deeply, which Rashi says refers not only to learning psukim or the mishnayos, but learning the svaris of the Gemaras to understand the ideas, the things that the Amoraim explained in the Gemara, and that style of learning should be done in the sukkah. So on that the Gemara asks, Aini, is this so? But V'amar Rave said, Mikra, to learn psukim, which is easier and simpler, Misna, to learn mishnayos, b'metalalta. That's in the sukkah. But the Tnuye, to learn deeper, to learn the svaris of the Amiroim that you have in the Gemara, that you don't bar metalalta, that you learn outside of the sukkah, because you have to be able to focus, so the ear, the outside is not good. You have to be in another place where you have the proper ear to be able to learn and understand what you're learning. So the Gemara answers that it's not a question. It depends how you're learning. Lekashia, hob, migras, here's when you're learning quicker, you're just learning the information. So then even if you're learning things like Gemara, you can learn it in the sukkah. And be yuni. And then if you're learning a more intense learning, to think deeper, to understand, to analyze the concept, so that's something that's done only in the sukkah, outside the sukkah, that is, to be able to learn better. Kihal, like we find the style of learning, the Rabbe Bar Chome, or the Girsi you have on the side of here was Rave and Rami Bar Chome, Ki Avakaimi Mekamei Rav Chiste. When they were learning by Rav Chiste, so the way they learned was Mirati Gemara Bahadi Adodi. First they would quickly go over the Gemara together, and Vahadar, and after that Naini Biswara. They would come back and learn it again and go deeper into the understanding of the concepts that they learned quicker before. So these are the two ways of learning. It says similar in Shulchan Aruch regarding davening. If someone doesn't have a shul in the city that he's in, and he's not going to be davening in shul, so then if you're able to daven peacefully and calmly, you should daven in the sukkah. But if you're not, then similar to what it says here regarding learning, you can daven inside the house.